Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to take a minute and just thank you. I want to thank all of you who have reached out to me after last week's episode with your kind and heartfelt comments about restorative reading and writing. I loved them all. Some of you shared your excitement for this new idea. Some of you offered yourselves as guinea pigs for restorative reading and writing sessions, which I love. And some of you really got behind the idea of a course or a workshop on restorative reading and writing, and especially the idea of restorative sessions and maybe even a restorative retreat. It filled my heart. It sent me to my notebook, brainstorming ideas and plans for what might come. So stay tuned. Keep those comments coming. You can send them to me on the show notes at A Lit Life. You can find me at Affinito Lit on social media. You can click the button that allows you to leave a voice message on this episode. And you can even just email me at stephanieaffinito@gmail.com. I would love to continue to hear your ideas as I think and wonder and plan, and most importantly, I dream about this new idea. So now on today's episode. Today I am back with another episode that captures a particular theme in 3 books. Now, today's episode definitely does piggyback a little bit on last week's episode on restorative reading and writing, but I'm going to put a special focus on reading. When I think of reading books to grow through what we go through, when I think of reading books to give me a little dose of bibliotherapy, there are basically 2 broad categories that I have for how books can do that. There's the explicit books and the implicit books. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I think of books that explicitly help us grow through what we go through, these are very overtly focused on particular topics. And it's usually nonfiction, right? So if you have a challenge, an issue, a desire, a question, you go to books to answer those questions or to fill that intention. So let's say you want to learn how to start an edible garden, which, yes, I thought maybe I'd do one day, but I don't know, my thumbs are not green. Or let's say you want to become healthier and you want to learn how to clean up your diet or exercise in the best way or figure out how all those people in the blue zone areas are living so long. Or maybe you need some parenting skills. You're going through a challenging time with a toddler or teenagers. That's my jam right now. So if you are looking for explicit support through books to grow through what you go through, then you turn to nonfiction. You usually turn to an informational text that is 100% targeted to that topic. A book about gardening, a book about getting healthier, a book about parenting. Now, sometimes that can be a straight informational text, just filled with whatever you need. Sometimes it might be more of a narrative nonfiction. So it is an informational text, but it's filled with stories and anecdotes and pictures and resources too. And then sometimes those explicit books might also be considered memoirs or biographies of people who have conquered the thing you want to conquer, or who have went through the thing that you have gone through too and are now on the other side, and you can learn from them. So those books are very specifically focused on a particular topic with the intention of sharing that knowledge on that topic with you. That's one way to think about bibliotherapy and using books to help you grow through what you go through. But there's a second category that is more implicit. So these books are not overtly focused on one particular topic. You might not even know what topics you'll uncover inside of those books. Instead, the lessons are hidden inside the covers, right? It is up to the reader to uncover them, whether it's learning a lesson from a character who went through a particular challenge, if it's learning a lesson about, or from, I should say, the plot or the problem and the solution. The reader has to do a little bit more work picking out those lessons. Now, sometimes you don't know what lessons you're looking for, right? We can just pick up a book and something sparks something in us, whether it's a new hobby to try, a new way to look at a situation in our life, or just a way to help us be better. Sometimes, though, we are specifically seeking out these kinds of implicit books and carefully choosing them based on what we know about the book and the reviews that we have seen on it. So implicit books for bibliotherapy are usually fiction texts where the characters are growing through something and you want to take those lessons and apply them to your own life. So do you see those big differences? We've got explicit, that's very direct nonfiction, and implicit, which is a little bit more fuzzy, fiction learning. But today, I have 3 books that defy my own bibliotherapy boundaries that I have set for myself. And these books do both. They are both explicit and implicit. How do they do that? Well, they have a special focus on this new genre, or at least I'm calling it a new genre for me, that I love because it's an implicit book where we're going to learn lessons from the characters, but it also has a very explicit focus on therapists and therapy. So we're getting the best of both worlds here. We are learning from the characters, but we also have these therapists inside of the book that are just kind of kicking ourselves or giving our own kick in the pants a bit to get ourselves moving in the right direction. So the 3 books that I'm going to share today, they blend and blur those bibliotherapy boundaries that I had set, and they also differ in content and style and publication. So the first book I'm going to share is a pretty big top-selling book that is probably a book that you already know about. The second book is a brand new book. I think it is lesser known at this point, but I think everybody needs to read it. And then the third book is a book that isn't out quite yet. It isn't going to be published until February, but I think it is so good that it needs to be on our radar and in your pre-order cart. So let's get started with what those 3 books are. The first book is the top seller that I was talking about. And this book is the very, very popular Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. So this book definitely blurs the boundaries. And to me, it just felt like a gift as I was reading it. It was a gift of self-reflection, a gift of introspection, and even a gift of transformation, because we have characters who are going through hard things and a therapist who is helping them get through it. So we're learning from the characters and we're learning from the therapy that they are also getting. So in the book, we get to learn from Lori Gottlieb and her incredible story and raw honesty as she navigates her own life in therapy as a therapist. So I love this. We have a blend of her memoir, a blend of her information, but also a blend of her client stories. Now, of course, everything is private and protected and nothing is revealed that could put anybody at risk. But the stories that she tells about herself and her clients, they are engaging, they're enthralling, they're relatable, and we can learn about ourselves in the process. So I really was struck by her story, first of all. She finally found her life's passion after a few false career starts, trying to figure out exactly what she wanted to do with this one life. I was very admiring of how she chose her own path to motherhood, how she dealt with a pretty sudden and very unexpected in the way it happened kind of breakup. And she was just grappling with all sorts of life changes, just like we all are. But she was honest about them and she put them in the book and she didn't back down so that we could see that we are not alone in whatever it is we are going through too. But beyond that, she connected her stories to the stories of her patients or her clients so that we could see how she was learning right alongside with them and how they were teaching her a thing or two or three also. I also love that because she was an actual therapist, she was able to bring in the research, the science, and the philosophy that she has based her entire work on. That's the part that I really found fascinating. I need to know the why behind the things that I do in order for them to work. I could try things, but if I'm not behind it 100% and I don't get why it might work, then I just kind of block it from working anyway. So I really appreciated that research, science, philosophy base. It was fascinating. And of course, it was really therapeutic. I was learning from her story. I was learning from the stories of her clients. I was learning from the way that she was providing therapy and support for her clients. You couldn't read it without thinking about yourself, without appreciating yourself in a new way and how your life works and how you tick. And most importantly, I think what this book taught me is that we play a stronger role in determining the course of our lives than we think. That was my big aha moment, my big takeaway from all of the lessons that she wove in from her own work to the work of her patients. We are the main character in our own lives, and we can decide what happens. That was a pretty powerful lesson, and that's why I think it's a must read. So that's Lori Gottlieb's Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Now, up next is my second book. This book is brand new, and because of it, lesser known, but I think we all need to change that. I absolutely adored this book, and I read it as fast as I possibly could. The book I'm talking about is This Time Could Be Different by Kristen Wehrman. And I started my review online of this book with this sentence. This book was the most inexpensive round of therapy I've ever received. If you want a fiction book that will walk you through how to change your life step by step, then this is the book for you. This is the perfect example of how explicit and implicit bibliotherapy can come together. And let me explain why. In this book, we meet two best friends, Madeline and Emma. Madeline is a 40-something-year-old woman who has reached pretty great success in her career, but she is incredibly overworked. She is stressed, she is tired, and she is very, very unhappy. Now, Emma, her best friend, she's trying to juggle her career, her marriage, and motherhood with varying degrees of success. Now, this book is told in alternating vignettes. So I love books that are told in alternating perspectives, but typically that happens in chapters. One chapter is from one character's point of view, and the next chapter is from another. This book didn't do that. This book did it in alternating scenes instead. And so we went back and forth between Madeline's life and Emma's life very quickly, which kept me turning the pages and pretty much ignoring everything else. I realized how much I loved this format, and it really was the perfect structure so that we could see the different journeys both of them were taking to make their lives better. Here's the best part, though. Olivia. Olivia is Madeline's therapist, and in my mind, I call her the fairy god therapist who helps Madeline, and yes, me, make sense of her old stories and write new ones for her future. We actually get a glimpse into the therapy sessions with Madeline and Olivia. I read and reread and highlighted and sticky noted and wrote things down in my journal that Olivia was saying to Madeline because I knew I needed to read them. I needed to learn them. I needed to do that 3-minute meditation and not worry about the time. I needed to think about where emotions were coming from and identify old stories and decide if I want to keep them or not, because, by the way, we have that choice. I was so struck by Olivia, and I wish Olivia was real and in real life. And I don't know how Kristen made those therapy sessions come to life and feel like they were made just for you, but she did. I loved this book. I devoured this book. I ignored other things to read this book. And the best part is that this book helped me do something that I feel is a very important part of bibliotherapy and restorative reading. It made me take inspired action. So I didn't just read the book, turn the last page, and move on to the next one. I sat with it for a bit. I got out my notebook and I wrote about the things that were going on in my mind as a result of what Madeline and Emma were going through and what Olivia was saying, as if they were real friends. I actually made an audio meditation for myself by copying Olivia's words, a 3-minute audio meditation that was so powerful for Emma that I thought, that sounds really good. I can do that in 3 minutes. Let me see how it feels. You know what else I did? I actually ordered the supplies that I needed to make my own natural soap and face cream because of this book. Like, really, I'm not kidding. You know that other books have inspired me to grow edible flowers and make lemon meringue pie. This book is inspiring me to make soap and face cream, right? To just do something creative, do something I wouldn't normally do just because, just to see how it feels and just because we can. And yes, I'll take pictures. Hopefully it comes out okay. But this book had everything. It had characters that you couldn't help but relate to. It had a therapist that you couldn't help but learn from. And it just had all of the elements of a very propulsive novel that really touched your heart. Like, I think everybody needs to go read this book. So that's This Time Could Be Different by Kristen Weirman. Now, my third book is the book that hasn't been published yet. It's not going to be published until February of 2024, but I think you need to know about it. I think many of you will want to read it, and it's already getting so much press and accolades that everyone is talking about it. So the book I'm talking about next is Since She's Been Gone by Sagit Schwartz. This book is one that Zibby Books, you know I love Zibby Books, she is actually calling it one of the most anticipated books of 2024, and I agree. Right? Some books that we read, they have us compulsively turning the pages because we cannot get enough of the plot. And then other books we read, they pull at the heartstrings, right? And we are invested and in deep emotionally. And then there are other books that just gives us fascinating insight into a world that is unlike our own, that we could never understand unless we were reading a book. This book, Since She's Been Gone, does all of those things. It does all of those things so beautifully that you cannot help but be invested instantly from the first page to the last. I am pretty sure that anyone who reads this book will become instantly and very intimately connected to Beatrice. Now, Beatrice is a therapist who is navigating some pretty unexpected and big life changes. And those unexpected life changes awaken the eating disorder she thought she left behind years ago. Now, the book alternates between past and present. So readers can understand and get very hooked into the thrilling story that is happening in the moment with Beatrice, who is navigating those life changes and trying to figure out what the heck is going on in her world and with her family, because everything she thought she knew has been flipped upside down. But when we see how she deals with the present life challenges that she has, we see that that eating disorder is something that is very present for her. So the book does flash back to the past to give us the insight and the backstory we need on what life was like for Beatrice back then. How did the eating disorder come to be? How did she deal with it? How did she navigate it? How did she recover and get through it to become the therapist she is today? I think the back and forth structure was brilliant to bring this character to life. And it just gives the reader this incredible insight, not just to Beatrice, but to anyone who is dealing with an eating disorder or some sort of addiction or any kind of challenge that really needs some therapy in order to help them out. I was surprised at every turn. I did not see the truth in this book coming. I really, really didn't. I picked it up because I was so taken by the idea that this was the first novel I had heard of, and probably the first novel ever, where a main character, has an eating disorder, but that is not the only focus of the book. It's not a memoir. It's not a tell-all. It's not a nonfiction book. It just so happens that this woman going through incredible life changes and a thrilling storyline that kind of shocks you later on, it just so happens that she has an eating disorder. And so you learn about how she navigates that as she is dealing with real life. Now, you may not have an eating disorder, right? You may not know anyone with an eating disorder, and the eating disorder part might not be the thing that draws you to this book. But I think regardless, we all have something, right? We all have an inner child somewhere that is healing from something. And even if it isn't an eating disorder, it could be, likely is, something else. And maybe it's not as big as a mental illness or an addiction or a disorder, but there's all of us have something in our inner being from long ago that impacts who we are today, right? For better or worse. So don't think that this book is only about an eating disorder. I want you to think about it as a book where you get to glimpse how this woman, this incredibly strong, brave woman going through so much, recovers, how she comes out on the other side. That's the piece that I think is so powerful. It's a book for readers who love suspense. Like I said, I was on the edge of my seat. I did not see what was coming. It's a book for readers who love family drama, because family drama is a lot of the challenges that Beatrice is going through. And it gives you insight into a way of thinking that may not be like your own. And yes, we learn from Beatrice, but yes, we also learn from the therapy and the therapists that you end up meeting in the story, just like the other two books. I think this book is going to hit the shelves running. I think it's a book that just gives us so much, not just to our reading life, but to our actual life, and really highlights something in the mental wellness field that needs to be highlighted. She is a therapist herself who wrote this book in order to give a glimpse into this world. And I'm really excited to say that she is going to be an upcoming guest on the podcast, because I was just so taken with this book and reached out to her multiple times. She's a very kind and active person on social media. And so I'm happy to say that she will be on the podcast fairly soon, and we'll get to dive even deeper into Since She's Been Gone. So there you go. 3 books that feel like therapy. 3 books that in my mind, I feel like they've invented this new genre, at least for me. And now I really want more of these books. So you know what's coming. I have a request. Do you know of any other books that are like this, that have characters who are going through things, but that there's also a therapist or an element of therapy, whether that's traditional therapy or new age therapy or whatever therapy someone's trying. I would love to know about those books. I would like to create a new Bookology book list on my website. If you don't know about those book lists, I have been making book lists for almost any challenge I can think of. As a reader, you can come there and find books that will help you grow through what you go through. And I really want to create a new list that is in this bibliotherapy blended genre, where you can read books about characters going through real things and the therapy and the therapist that help them so that they can do the same for us in our life. So you can find me at Affinito Lit on social media. You can find me at the show notes at alitlife.com. You can click that voicemail button. And again, you can email me at stephanieaffinito@gmail.com. I just want to end with this one really important reminder. Books are tools to a better life. Whether those tools and those books are explicit or implicit or both, books are patiently waiting for us to find them and then take inspired action. That's what it's all about. That's where the magic happens. When your reading life influences your actual life, that's the kind of magic that I'm looking for. And as always, if you want support figuring out what those books could be for you, reach out. Reach out and ask me. I love personally recommending books, and who knows, it might inspire a new episode of the Get Literate podcast. So thanks for listening today, everyone. I hope you go find a book that lights you up as much as this newly blended genre lights me up, and you spend the rest of the week reading. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll see you inside the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.